Hi, I'm Julie Barrett, founder of Conservative Ladies of Washington. And as we get ready to kick off the 2024 legislative session, I wanted to talk to you about kind of a package of bills that our team is pretty concerned about going into this session. So a couple of these bills, it's a package of 4 bills, and a couple of them are carryovers from the 2023 legislative session, and a couple of them are new ones which were dropped in pre-filing in the month of January. So we've got House Bill 1333. This is kind of AG Bob Ferguson's Ministry of Truth is what a lot of people are calling it. This would set up a commission of people that would sort of identify domestic terrorist groups, specifically right-wing extremism is what they displayed in the 2023 hearings when the AG's office presented their findings of a sort of a task force that they had prior to this bill. So this would really be an attack on free speech. It would really put people with conservative, Christian, and non-radical left viewpoints really in a bad position. They mentioned several different groups in this presentation that are considered right-wing groups that they have already been targeting as domestic violent extremist groups. So that one is very concerning, and it really has a wide range of what the Attorney General's office would consider domestic violence extremism. So that one's a carryover from last year, and we are very concerned about them continuing to push this bill forward again in 2024. Another carryover from last year is Senate Bill 5427. I call this bill the Tattletale Hotline. And this would allow anyone who has been a victim of a so-called hate crime. So perhaps you said something to, let's just say, a coworker, and they took that as a hate crime. Maybe you wouldn't call them by their preferred pronouns. And so they could call the Attorney General's office, report this hate crime, and be eligible to receive up to $2,000 from the Attorney General's office. So this, as we see this, it makes it very easy to abuse this. And what is a hate crime is all up to perception. Even in the bill language, it talks a lot about perceived gender, gender expression, gender identity, that kind of language. So it's wide open to interpretation, making it a very dangerous bill for freedom of speech. So a couple of the ones that we have added to our little collection here in First Amendment legislation that we're concerned about is Senate Bill 5917. And I'm going to read you a little bit from the bill itself. This would be an act relating to criminal penalties for bias-motivated defacement of public or private property. So this again is another bill where the hate crime is based off of perception. The bill reads, a person is guilty of a hate crime offense if he or she maliciously or intentionally commits one of the following acts because of his or her perception of another person's race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender expression or identity, or mental, physical, or sensory disability. It goes on to say, writes, paints, or draws any inscription, figure, or mark of any type on any public or private building or other structure, any real or personal property, or any public property unless the person has obtained the express permission of the owner or operator of the property. So this is another bill that we're really concerned about with, these perception or expression. What does that even mean? And you and I might perceive things to be very different. And so to have something in our laws that is all based on perception and people could be prosecuted based on someone else's perception of what they say or do, this is a very dangerous bill. And, when you think about what would be construed of a hate crime. I have a friend who wore a shirt that said, real women aren't men. And she was attacked by people in the transgender community for hate speech, for wearing a shirt that said real women aren't men. So the perception here is a big issue and would be very problematic for people who don't go along with the leftist narrative and parrot the lines that they want us to parrot. So anybody who is a critical thinker or a free speaker, you're going to be in trouble with this kind of law. And it may seem like it might be a small deal right now, but we know with this legislation, they inch it forward and they inch it to where they want it to be. So this is dangerous ground that we're treading on. Another bill that we are really concerned about as part of this package is Senate Bill 5838. It has a House bill companion, House Bill 1934. This would establish an AI task force under the Attorney General's supervision. The Attorney General's office would be in charge of the task force. The task force would be made up of a number of different groups, most of them with leftist bias. Let's just take a look at some of the groups that would make up this task force. So you've got someone representing the office of the governor. Now, if you have, let's say Bob Ferguson is elected to governor, you've got someone that Bob Ferguson chose. Representing the office of the Attorney General, let's say Manka Dhingra is elected Attorney General. You've got someone that she's appointing to this. You'll have people representing WATEC Solutions, which I'm going to have a link to WATEC in the description so you can go check them out for yourself. WATEC is the organization that does a lot of the technology for Washington state government. A lot of leftism stuff in there that really concerns us. You'd have someone representing the Washington OSPI, so the state superintendent's office, state auditor representing the Washington sheriffs and police chiefs, and several other members. You'd have members from tribes, you'd have members from the LGBTQ community. You don't really have anyone from like the Catholic Church or the Christian Church or any of, the Mormon Church or any of these other religious organizations that may want to have a voice in this. And one of the things that the bill talks a lot about is the algorithmic bias. And as a conservative, as a Christian, I know that when AI searches things through its algorithm, it's searching for things for right-wing people, right? Like that's how the whole system has already been set up. So this is very concerning. And while it's just a task force, if you look at policy that's coming out of Olympia, most of it is a result of a task force. So this task force would meet once before the end of 2024, and then it would meet twice a year thereafter for, I think, 2 or 3 years. And the Attorney General's office would oversee these meetings and these reports and that sort of thing. Another concern about this task force is AI is moving so rapidly that 3 years from now, whatever this task force recommends may be outdated. So that's another concern here. But we really don't think that the Attorney General's office and the Democrats in Washington state should be in charge of artificial intelligence, especially when you combine it with these other bills about hate speech and perceptions and things like that. We know that this is a recipe for disaster and a recipe that does not sound good to free-thinking people. It probably won't end well for conservatives. I always like to explain legislation as kind of a web, like no bill usually stands independently of other legislation. So I'm bringing you all of these bills today to kind of show you how they sort of web and weave together to work together, and they all kind of play off of each other for the same agenda. And so these are bills that we will be watching as the session kicks off. We'll be looking to see which of these bills gets a hearing and how they're moving along. With it being an election year, we kind of hope that maybe the Democrats won't get too crazy. But I think that might be wishful thinking. I feel like the Democrats are very empowered to go forward with their agenda and push it as hard as they can. So I'll have links to all of these bills and our assessments of these bills in the description of the video for you to go and look at yourself. As always, draw your own conclusions. We're just here to provide information and our assessments of these bills, but ultimately you're the one that needs to read it and decipher and discern for yourself what you think about this. And then once we get underway, we will be sending you calls to action. So if you would like to speak out on these bills, we're going to tell you how to do that. I've got a link to our Substack in the description as well. I recommend that you subscribe to the Substack. That way you'll get all of our alerts and updates as soon as they come out. So I will see you again next time. Thanks for watching.